Come on up. Thank you, Wayne. Charlie Kroll, come on. Do it up. Okay, it's awesome to see you all. It's been way too long. That is completely my fault, and I am making amends. I think we have a fantastic presentation tonight. I'm super excited about this company because it's at the intersection of so much cool stuff, and that includes information technology, of course, energy, markets, math. It's pretty awesome. It's great stuff. So without further ado, please give a big hand to George Baker and Jessica Millar.
Thank you. Great to see everybody here. So I'm going to talk for, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 minutes, and Jessica's going to take up the rest. And so I have to try and not leave Jessica, without enough time to talk. So that's going to be my challenge. That's a bad start. There we go. So we're a smart grid company. And we are interested in particular, in renewables integration, in making the grid safe for renewables. And most people, when they think about renewables, think about this. They think about, these nice, wind turbines or solar panels. And what they don't understand, what most people don't understand, is that the real issue in renewables, as always, is this. Right? It's what's going on where you don't see it. And the problem with renewables integration, as most of you probably do know, is not in building wind turbines, it's how you integrate this stuff onto the electric grid. And in the long run, this is the entire problem, and even right now, in Denmark, in Ireland, in Iowa, by the way, in Iowa they stopped building wind because they can't handle the amount of wind that's coming onto the grid anymore. They have to turn off the wind in Iowa on a regular basis. I'll show you some stuff about this in a minute. So what we're doing as a company is we're working on this problem with renewables integration. And what we are devoted to as a company is using markets to solve the problem of renewables integration, to unleash renewable energy. So what do we mean by that? What we really mean is that the way the guys who, pardon me, they're almost all guys, who run the grid, the way that they think about this problem is a very kind of top-down, command and control way of operating this. And what we do as a company is we bring market principles, and as you'll see, real, actual market implementations to solving the problem of renewables integration. So what's the problem? So you've probably seen this picture before too. There's a picture of the wind resource in the United States. I could show you a picture of the solar resource in the United States, and it would look there would be in a different place, but would have the same problem, which is the resource is not where the people are. Okay, so that's why we have an electric grid problem in this country. That's why. So this problem is much less in Germany, by the way. Right? In Germany, they've got a compact country and a reasonably compact grid. They still have grid problems, but they're at the level of the whole country. Right? In the United States, we've got a real geographic problem. And this leads to the following issue. This is really interesting. So this is a picture of electricity prices in the Midwest. Okay, this is a heat map of electricity prices. And orange and yellow are high prices, and blue is low prices, and purple is negative prices. Okay, so what does that mean? What that means is that down there, that little splotch there on the Indiana-Illinois border, they will pay you to buy electricity. Generators have to pay to feed electricity into the electric grid. Okay? So now this happens, of course, because the grid can't move the stuff. So the fact that there's this big orange splotch just northwest of Chicago and this big purple splotch down there tells you that the electric grid is not a copper plate. Right? Because if it were, that could not happen. They cannot move the electricity across that because there's grid congestion going on. We've got this incredibly cool movie of this thing moving, but I'm not going to take the time to show it to you. Maybe we can show it to you afterwards. But the point is that purple splotch on any given day, you can go on the MISO website. I encourage you to do it. MISO is the Midwest Independent Systems Operator. Go on that website sometime and look at this heat map, and you will see that purple splotch. Every single day, for some hour between October and March, you will see that purple splotch move around the Midwest, right? As negative prices move their way through the system, as basically the wind starts blowing, and the grid operator is struggling to try and figure out how to move turn things on and turn things off, and basically can't solve the problem. Okay? So what we are interested in doing with this is creating load that can be responsive to this problem. Right, I told you, the way the grid guys think about it is they try and make generation match load, and we're trying to turn that on its head to make load responsive. So what we do is, we basically take resources that don't need, so your television is a very bad example of what we're talking about. When you turn your television on, you want that juice right now. But there are some resources, some types of heat, some types of air conditioning, your electric car meets this, your hot water heater meets this criterion, that can actually say, you know what, I don't need to take it right now. I could take it in a little while, right? And so we use that flexibility to say, we have a resource that's got an operating range. The price of electricity varies enormously over the course of a day, and what we do is we very smartly think about when do we want to buy electricity. We do forward projections for what we need. We look at the forward projection of electricity prices, and we say we're going to buy electricity in the times when electricity is cheap, not buy it in the times when electricity is dear, right? And essentially affect a kind of energy arbitrage by doing that. In addition to that, so this is what we call transactive load. This is load that I can actually pay attention to the conditions on the electric grid, can acknowledge what's going on the electric grid, and can make the load respond to that in some smart and intelligent way. So we do two things. One is we plan 2 days ahead for what the load is going to be. We look at prices and then sort of expected, we use prices as our signal for what's going to be happening on the grid. We plan 2 days ahead for what's going on the grid, and we say, we run this optimization program that says we want to buy, so for instance, for these heaters, we say, okay, over the next 24 hours, this heater is going to need to charge up for 6 hours. We look forward, we say, in the next 24 hours, the following 6 hours are the best time to do this, and we buy electricity in those 6 hours. Okay, so that's the first thing that we do. The other thing that we do is that, so the electric grid has to be perfectly in balance every single second. Literally every second, generation has to equal load. There is virtually no storage on the grid. So if that doesn't happen, bad stuff happens. Frequency starts going out of line, voltage starts varying, you guys know all of this stuff, okay? So how does the grid operator do this? They do this in the following, it's almost unbelievable. Every 2 seconds, they send a signal to the generators. And they tell them, ramp up, ramp down, ramp down, ramp up. So if you go to the power plant over here, which we did last year, they literally get this signal from ISO New England that's telling them to do this to their gas-fired power plant. And this thing is going, so when you turn on your toaster oven, that power plant goes to deliver that load. It's completely ridiculous, but it's what they do. We sit there, we get that signal from the ISO New England, and we turn load on. We turn load that has just a little bit of patience on and off. Okay, so when they tell the generator to ramp up, we turn off load. When they tell the generator to ramp down, we turn on load. So we provide that same second-to-second grid balancing by affecting load. And this load, notice, to provide this, it doesn't need to have very much patience at all. Your television set still doesn't work. But now all of a sudden your air conditioner, your refrigerator, almost any load that can afford to wait a few seconds, right, can do this. You got to worry about duty cycles and things on refrigerators, but that's what our software is designed to do. So that's basically what we're doing. As a company right now, how am I doing? I'm doing okay. As a company right now, what we're doing, we've developed a system. Jessica's going to show you a little bit more about how that system works. We've developed a system that is controlling several hundred load assets down in Pennsylvania and another dozen more in Concord, Massachusetts. Our goal right now as a company is to control more load. And we use the following, so I'm going to shift a little bit over to the sort of business side of what we're doing. We're looking for loads with very particular characteristics. We're looking for loads that use a lot of electricity. So we like megawatt hours per year. That's why we like residential heating, by the way. Residential heating uses about 15 to 30 megawatt hours per year, depending on whether you're in Pennsylvania or you're in Maine. That's a lot of load. By the way, that's if you in Rhode Island, if you were to heat your house with electricity, not that many people do, well over half of your total electric load would go to heating. Heating is a huge, huge load relative to the rest of the electric load. We think of air conditioning as being the big load, but that's just because air conditioning is the biggest load that we actually use electricity for. If you used electricity, if you counted the BTUs that went into your house, what you would find is the BTUs that go into heating your house swamps the BTUs that you use for everything else except your car. Your car uses as many BTUs as your heating does. Okay? So we're looking at loads that have a lot of megawatt hours where we can make a lot of money per megawatt hour, and we've got various different ways of making money. And we are interested in loads where the cost of the controls themselves don't cost very much. It's not too high. That's a big issue, right? If you have to spend $1,000 to get those controls on the load to be able to do this, you can't make the economics work. So it's basically this equation that we're looking at. Let me tell you a tiny bit about the loads that we're looking at right now. We're interested in electric thermal storage heat in Pennsylvania. Jessica will talk more about this. We're looking at electric thermal storage heat in Maine. It's cold up there, and they use a lot of oil. 85% of the homes in Maine heat with oil. So this is a real opportunity. Europe is a very interesting place for us right now because they have big electric grid problems. Right now, Germany generates 20% of its total electricity from wind, and that is going up. As you know, the Germans have decided to turn off all their nuclear plants. If they are not going to satisfy that load entirely with coal, which is what they're doing right now, which is somewhat worrisome, they are going to have to ramp up their renewables quite a bit. Ireland is on its way to 35% wind integration on their electric grid. Hot water heaters are a very interesting load. They don't use as much electricity as home heating, but they are very flexible. You can wait a while on charging up your hot water heater. It's a perfect load from our perspective. Cell phone tower air conditioning. So every single cell phone tower in the United States has a box full of electronics. The air conditioning, even in New England, the air conditioning on that thing runs 9 months out of the year. Wow. Because the box gets hot, and they don't, they're just not smart about it. They don't try and, provide decent ventilation. They just turn on the stupid air conditioner. Okay, so 9 months out of the year, that thing is running an air conditioner, which does not have to come on exactly when the thermostat says it needs to come on. Right? If you said, hey, we're going to let, right? So that's just enough patience in the load that we can actually use that to provide the kind of grid services that we're talking about. There's lots of other interesting loads out there. So compressed air. So here's an interesting factoid. 10% of industrial electric load goes to compressed air. Compressed air is they call it the fourth utility in a factory. It drives all the tools. Okay, so that's interesting. So anyway, there's ice-based air conditioning, there's electric cars, there's skating rinks, there's lots of potential electric loads out there with patience. So what we've developed is what we call a VNet. I'm just about to turn this over to Jessica. The idea is that we hook up all of these loads to our hierarchical network. We then talk to those things in our network operations center, aggregate the characteristics of those things, and talk to the grid operator. So we present to the grid operator this aggregated load that's got nice, predictable characteristics that the grid operator can use to balance the electric grid for the purposes both of providing the services that they need now and ultimately for doing renewables integration. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica. Jessica's the original founder of the company.
Good job.
Testing, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, yeah, it's National Sound Engineer Day, guys. Okay, yeah, this is my microphone. I don't project quite as loudly as George does, but I think everybody can hear me, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a picture of our heaters down in Pennsylvania. The little red bars on each heater tells you how full that heater is. We heat these guys up. I'll show you a picture of one of these between 100 degrees Celsius and about 400 degrees Celsius. So the temperature basically tells you how much energy the thing is storing. So this is essentially a kind of ugly picture of an aggregated battery. And the heaters that are pink are charging, the heaters that are white aren't. And what that VNet does is it orchestrates these heaters, it tells them when to turn on and when to turn off. So what I want to talk to you about is what we're doing, like what we're actually doing and why it's fun. So we are going into people's houses, little old ladies that we know more about rural Pennsylvania, the rural Pennsylvania psyche than I ever thought I would know. We find people who have these electric thermal storage heaters in their homes. So an electric thermal storage heater is a collection of bricks with heating elements that run through the bricks. So this idea of heating up bricks or stone, this is essentially Stone Age technology. This is something that's been around forever. Big advance when you add a thermostat and a fan that the thermostat controls, because this means that you can control when that, and insulation, when that heat comes out into the room. Then second big advance when you add a processor control board that determines when energy goes in. So this is, the prediction that software will eat the world, coming true for old electric thermal storage heaters in Pennsylvania. So that's what we do. We go into these heaters, we put our little board on there, we measure the brick temperature, we see how full they are. The thing learns the characteristics of the room over over a period of time, and it sends up to us what its various, its state, and we send down to it a charging strategy. There's this prediction that software is eating the world, and and when this happens, you don't even notice, right? I mean, these folks, what they see is that their thermostat works better, and that they have more control, and that they have now, instead of like the skanky old thing that ought to get ripped out, they have something that's probably more advanced than anybody else in the world, and they get a huge kick out of it. A lot of these people that we meet, the utility sold them 30 years ago on this idea, this dream of energy storage, and they got the idea, and we come to them and we say, and now we're going to actually make it work, and we're going to send you guys a rebate for helping us make the grid a smart place, and they just get such a kick out of it, and we get a kick out of doing that, because what we're doing is, what we're talking about here is using markets to solve renewables integration, but what we're really doing is something a little bit more profound. We're part of this movement away from command and control and towards intelligent distributed operations. And this is not something that happens in a stakeholder process at the grid operators where we're going to be like the little David up against the Goliaths of the various grid operators. It's because we're going to just make it work, and it's going to work for everybody, and it's going to bring value for everybody. And these people in Pennsylvania who made this choice 20 years ago to do something to help the grid, and then we come to them and we say something that makes sense to them and it resonates. They end up being those seeds for a distributed technology. I mean, it's also true that like the cool Python code that we're doing in our labs and like watching these people and figuring out which crazy ones turn their thermostats up randomly and which ones actually do something sensible and turn them down at night. But I mean, we can figure out the R factor of these houses by looking at the thermostat calls of these heaters, and it's just really fun. The markets they're just markets will find a way, and this is what we're going to places where our technology is needed. Some of them have external markets, which is good because then they have a mechanism to pay us by that's kind of automated. But the really what we're doing when we talk about using markets to solve the renewables integration problem is that we have developed internal markets that can essentially go wherever anybody's willing to pay us and figure out the external constraints, which, by the way, vary wildly from region to region. So George was talking about how in Pennsylvania you use X for heat, and in Maine you use Y. Well, one of the reasons why Ireland and Germany are so interesting to us right now is because they don't have shale gas, and we do. And that makes a huge difference for energy. Basically, every region has its own local ecosystem for energy. And you can't design something from the top down that's going to be able to predict all of those things and predict what happens. I mean, this is what you use markets for. We come up with a market-based infrastructure that's able to adapt to new external constraints and come up with the value that's needed. So we look for places where our technology is needed, where storage is actually valuable, where it can bring real value, not to us, not just to us, yes to us, not only to us, but also to the Slater Fund, who put money into us at the beginning, but also to homeowners, but also to the homeowners and the grid operators. And so I'm going to just end with this slide. So this is a picture of, these are heaters, and those are bids for each of those heaters. So each heater basically has a price at which it would be willing to start buying energy. And those prices, by the way, are unfortunately in watt hours per cent. So that's not a standard. I mean, usually it's either cents. They're cents per watt hour, and it's not cents per kilowatt hour. It's not dollars per megawatt hour. But the point is that each of our heaters has a little agent running for it that has its opinion about the behaviors of its home and it's the people in its home and weather forecasts. We do have different weather forecasts for different people. We haven't gotten to the point. My dream is that we turn this into a platform and we create a challenge. Take our asset and trade it better than we do. Come up with algorithms for these heaters that can do a better job than what we're doing for them. Right now we have a fairly simple model for what these guys are, because what we're focusing on is the thing that has greatest value to us right now, which is creating the market structures that lets these guys fit into them. So this is the thing that when we go to the various when we go to people who've made markets through stakeholder processes and they see that we've done this and that we don't actually have to spend interminable hours talking to generators and regulators about what we're doing, their eyes kind of bug out, and I think they feel very envious. But the best thing is that we're able to make money with the grid operators, we're able to make money with the homes, And we've taken this electric thermal storage as a use case, and we're planning to take it, and go help software eat the world with this energy and solve renewables integration through markets.
Awesome. And if it isn't obvious, we've got two Ivy League professors talking to us tonight. I think Harvard and Brown are represented. Pretty great. So yeah, please let the questions fire. John?
So this seems pretty awesome.
And shout it, John.
All right, so this seems awesome.
John, shout it again.
So what kind of, so it seems like the higher the variance in prices per day, say, the better you can do for the world, right? Is that right?
Absolutely. We're in the storage business. We love volatility.
Right. So you love volatility. Renewables provide volatility. Totally cool. What kind of, is there some way you can quantify how awesome in terms of the savings to, negative prices? Geez, that sounds awful. So what?
That sounds great.
Well, you're solving that.
Are you kidding?
So you're solving that, which is super cool. But what? How would you quantify, if you will, what you're giving back to the system? At least in terms of the immediate thing, because you're building some infrastructure, right, which eventually could allow the system to handle a lot of volatility. But so that's interesting. But what, if you turn this on in that place, how do you quantify how much awesomeness you provide?
John, that was the longest question ever. Let's please make the answer. At least
So I'm going to fight the urge. So I'm an economics professor, right, in a former life. So there's a long economics answer to that question, which I won't give you. Yeah, exactly. You're all grateful for that. So the answer is a negative price for electricity in the Midwest clearly represents an inefficient constraint on the system, right? It can't be that in one place electricity is worth -2 cents and in another place it's worth +10 cents. And so by providing valuable load in that place, you have done good for the world.
Definitely.
Right? So you just, and so quantifying that is a hard thing to do. That's what the economics professor would try and tell you, right? But the point is, when we get to so one of the things that venture capitalists tell us is, you're going to, eat this arbitrage opportunity, and all of a sudden you're not going to have any market anymore. It's like, if we eat this arbitrage opportunity, we won't worry about anything anymore. These price volatilities are so deeply baked in to the way that the electric grid operates that that if we can even have a small effect on price volatility, then we will be, we will have done an enormous amount of good for the world.
So this is also why you make markets in the first place, right? Is to figure out what is the value. And interestingly, what's happened in the States is there are these locational marginal prices for electricity, which is why you get that price. The price varies in different places. In Germany, they have this concept that they are a large copper plate, so they only have one electricity price for the entire country. And they're starting to acknowledge that perhaps they are not a large copper plate and they have problems. So, that leads to the two possibilities. One is you get the markets open enough so that, so that resources that can actually adapt and respond can participate in that, which is the problem in the markets in the States. There's a lot of problems where load is assumed to be able to only, load is not really considered to be responsive, and so it can't get locational prices. It can only get average prices. So you have to wait until, for us, we have to wait until those rules change before we'd be willing to go to that kind of place. The other possibility is to go to some place like Ireland, where the problem is so severe that you can just go in and say, look, let us turn on instead of ramping down your wind turbines, and they will save X. Pay us 1/3 of that, and we will be able to make a huge fortune. So basically, there's a question of whether it's kind of preventative medicine, which is like somebody's put in a market that is reasonable and sane and that we can participate in, or whether it's, go to the place where they're suffering so much that they're walking around on one leg and they're in crutches, and we can give them their second leg back. And then the value proposition is kind of like staring them in the face.
Yeah? Okay.
No, you guys please choose.
Okay.
Just shout it out, that's all I
How
have.
much human intelligence do you depend on in your software? So are you looking to an operator to stand there and look at a terminal, or is this all internally managed? George?
All
right,
a bunch of it is coded.
Okay.
Right, so all of the projection of energy use, all of the buying strategy for the individual assets, all of that is coded, comes up automatically. This price list comes up automatically. The thing that is not yet hard coded is the trading strategy for energy. And so literally, Jessica and Craig and I, about every other day, sit down and rethink how we want to design our bidding strategy for energy for the next 2 days in PJM. It's really cool, and it's really fun, and it's too complicated for us to figure out how to code it up hard yet.
But it sounds like a regular trading.